The night shift at Naval Air Station Oceana was supposed to be quiet. Monica Reyes pushed her mop across the hangar floor at 200 hours, the rhythmic squeak of wheels echoing through cavernous space filled with silent FA-18 Super Hornets. She'd been doing this for 3 years, cleaning up after pilots who never looked her twice, invisible in her gray coveralls while they strutted past in flight suits adorned with patches that told stories she'd never be part of. Or so they thought. Her daughter Sophia was asleep in their apartment off base, watched by a neighbor Monica paid with half her grocery budget. Single motherhood and night janitorial work weren't glamorous, but they were honest. What nobody knew, what her ID badge and time card didn't show, was that Monica Reyes had once worn a different uniform, that she'd logged over 2,000 hours in an EA-6B Prowler before a training accident that wasn't her fault ended her career and nearly ended her life. The Navy had processed her out with a medical discharge, a small disability check, and a handshake that felt like erasure. She'd stopped mentioning her service after the first dozen times people responded with surprised silence or worse, disbelief. A Latina woman from El Paso who'd flown electronic warfare missions. The doubt in their eyes hurt more than the shrapnel scars hidden beneath her sleeves. Tonight felt different. The wind outside screamed against the hangar doors with unusual violence, carrying the salt-thick promise of the storm that had grounded all training flights. Monica was emptying a trash bin near the personnel exit when she heard it, a sound that made her freeze, mop clattering to the concrete. Somewhere outside, muffled by wind and rain, an engine was choking. Not the smooth roar of a healthy jet, but the desperate, irregular cough of something dying. Then came the impact, distant but unmistakable, followed by a secondary explosion that lit the night sky orange through the hangar's high windows. Every instinct from her former life ignited. Monica dropped everything and ran toward the sound, muscle memory, overriding the 3 years she'd spent trying to forget she'd ever been anything other than invisible. The security gate was unmanned in the chaos, klaxons already wailing their emergency song. She vaulted the barrier and sprinted into darkness, toward the flames blooming near the auxiliary runway where the Chesapeake Bay met the base perimeter. Rain hammered her face. Lightning illuminated the scene in strobing snapshots. An FA-18E Super Hornet, tail number visible, nose down in shallow water, cockpit already half submerged and sinking fast into the marsh. The aircraft was inverted, canopy beneath the waterline, fuselage crumpled where it had cartwheeled across the embankment before sliding into the bay. Monica's mind automatically cataloged details even as her legs carried her forward. The deployed drag chute tangled in marsh grass, the starboard engine still glowing cherry red, fuel spreading in rainbow sheets across black water. Someone was inside. Someone was drowning while the jet settled deeper into the mud. She hit the water without breaking stride, the cold stealing her breath. The depth increased rapidly from ankle to waist to chest as she pushed toward the wreckage. 40 feet out, the water reached her shoulders. The cockpit was upside down, submerged, and she could see through the murky water the faint glow of emergency lighting inside. Monica dove. Her hands found the canopy rail, then traced along to the manual release. The mechanism was jammed, bent from impact. She surfaced, gulped air, and dove again. This time she braced her feet against the fuselage and pulled with everything she had. The canopy gave way suddenly, and she nearly lost her grip. Inside, a figure hung inverted in the ejection seat, unconscious, held by harness straps with water rising past their helmet. Monica recognized the rank insignia even underwater, a commander, someone important enough that their loss would matter to people who made decisions. She worked the harness release, remembering the mechanism from a lifetime ago, and the pilot's body went slack in her arms. Breaking the surface with the dead weight of another human being was the hardest thing Monica had done since her last combat flight. She kicked backward, dragging the pilot toward shore, aware of the jet settling deeper, aware of the fuel spreading, aware that any spark could turn the bay into an inferno. Her feet found purchase in the mud. She hauled the pilot up the embankment as sirens converged from multiple directions, as flashlights swept the darkness, as voices shouted coordinates and commands. Monica laid the pilot flat, tilted the head back, checked for breathing. Nothing. She started compressions, counting the rhythm that had been drilled into her during survival training. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. The pilot's flight suit was soaked, nameplate unreadable in the darkness. 30 more. 2 more breaths. On the third cycle, the pilot convulsed and coughed up bay water. Monica rolled them into recovery position as emergency vehicles screamed to a halt nearby, as personnel in reflective vests swarmed the scene. Someone pulled Monica back. Someone else took over medical care. And then she was standing in the rain, alone again, watching paramedics load the pilot into an ambulance while officers shouted questions she couldn't hear over the ringing in her ears. A base security officer approached, flashlight beam finding her face. "Ma'am, what's your name? What were you doing out here?" Monica's ID badge was still clipped to her coveralls, soaked but readable. The officer's flashlight dropped to it, then back to her face. His expression shifted from urgency to confusion. "You're janitorial staff," she nodded, suddenly aware of how she must look. A cleaning woman in gray coveralls, dripping with bay water and jet fuel, her black hair plastered to her face. Not a hero, just someone who'd been in the wrong place at the right time, or maybe the right place after all. "I heard the crash," Monica said simply. "Someone needed help." The officer's radio crackled with traffic. The pilot was stable, being transported to Portsmouth Naval Medical Center, condition critical but alive. The jet was a total loss, sinking deeper into the bay. Salvage crews were being mobilized. Investigation teams were en route. Monica gave her statement in short, precise sentences. She didn't mention her background, her flight hours, her former life. She was just Monica Reyes, night shift janitor, who'd happened to be nearby when Commander somebody or other had gone down. They took her name, her contact information, and told her to go home, change clothes, and report for a follow-up interview in the morning. She walked back toward the hangar, invisible again, while behind her the organized chaos of a military emergency unfolded under portable floodlights. The ambulance disappeared into the night, carrying someone whose name she didn't know but whose weight she'd remember in her arms forever. By the time Monica retrieved her mop and bucket, logged out, and drove her battered Honda Civic back to her apartment, dawn was threatening the eastern horizon. Sophia would be waking soon, needing breakfast before school. Monica stood in her tiny bathroom, peeling off wet coveralls, and caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman looking back had mud in her hair and exhaustion carved into her face, but her eyes held something that had been absent for 3 years: recognition. She'd been a pilot once. Tonight, for 20 minutes in freezing water, she'd been a pilot again. Monica showered, dressed Sophia, made breakfast, and walked her daughter to the bus stop. Just another morning, in a life built from the rubble of dreams that had ended in smoke and silence, and a medical board's final decision. She slept poorly, dreams full of sinking aircraft and voices calling from beneath dark water. When her phone rang at 1300 hours, she almost didn't answer. The voice on the other end was crisp, female, and spoke with the unmistakable authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Ms. Reyes, this is Captain Patricia Okonkwo, Commander Air Wing 7. I need you to listen carefully. In approximately 30 minutes, a convoy will arrive at your address. You are not in trouble. You are not being investigated, but it is imperative that you come with them. Do you understand?" Monica sat up, fully awake now, her heart rate climbing. Yes, ma'am. Can you tell me what this is about?" There was a pause, and when Captain Okonkwo spoke again, her voice carried weight that pressed through the phone. "The man you pulled from the bay last night is Commander James Bridger, Deputy Commander of Carrier Strike Group 12. He's also the son of Admiral Marcus Bridger, Chief of Naval Operations. You saved the CNO's son, Ms. Reyes, and now the Admiral would like to meet you." The line went dead. Monica stood in her apartment, staring at the phone, trying to process information that didn't fit into the careful, small life she'd built. She'd saved someone important, someone whose father controlled the entire United States Navy. Through her window, she heard them before she saw them, the deep rumble of diesel engines, multiple vehicles moving in formation. She pulled back the curtain. 5 Humvees, matte green, were rolling up her street in a line that looked more like an invasion than a visit. Neighbors were already stepping onto porches, phones out, filming. The convoy stopped in front of her building. Personnel emerged, not in combat gear but in dress uniforms, moving with the precision of a ceremony. A lieutenant commander approached her door and knocked. Monica answered, still in her civilian clothes, jeans and a worn college sweatshirt that had belonged to her ex-husband. The officer rendered a salute, to her, to a woman in a sweatshirt who cleaned floors for minimum wage. "Ms. Reyes, we're here to escort you to a meeting with Admiral Bridger. Please come with us, ma'am." She looked past him at the Humvees, at the neighbors recording everything, at Sophia's school bus scheduled to arrive in 4 hours. "I need to pick up my daughter," the officer nodded. "Already coordinated, ma'am. She'll be brought to base after school by proper escort. You have my word she'll be safe and this will be explained appropriately. But the Admiral is waiting and he does not like to wait." Monica grabbed her jacket and followed him to the second Humvee in the convoy. The door opened, and she climbed into a vehicle she'd only ever seen in deployment zones, now idling outside her apartment complex like something from a surreal dream. The interior smelled of leather and gun oil. The convoy moved out with military efficiency, navigating morning traffic with the kind of coordination that suggested this route had been planned, timed, and rehearsed. Monica sat in silence, hands folded in her lap, mind racing through possibilities and consequences. They passed through the main gate at Naval Station Norfolk with no delay, security waving them through. The convoy didn't stop at any of the administrative buildings. Instead, it rolled directly to the waterfront, where ships of the Atlantic Fleet were moored in gray rows that stretched to the horizon. They stopped at a pier where an admiral's barge waited. The escort became more formal, more ceremonial. Monica walked between officers in dress uniforms, their shoes clicking on concrete in perfect synchronization, until she was helped aboard a boat flying a 4-star flag. The barge cut across the harbor toward a massive vessel that dominated the anchorage, USS Harry S. Truman, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, over 1,000 feet of American naval power. They came alongside a boarding platform. Monica was piped aboard with honors normally reserved for dignitaries, the bosun's whistle cutting through harbor sounds. An entire side party rendered honors as she stepped onto the carrier deck. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity. She wanted to cry at the recognition. Mostly, she wanted to understand what was happening and why it felt like her carefully reconstructed life was about to change in ways she couldn't control. A captain, not Okonkwo, someone else, led her through passageways she remembered from her time in service, the narrow corridors and steep ladders that were the circulatory system of every carrier. They climbed upward toward officers' country, toward the spaces where decisions were made and wars were planned. The captain stopped at a door marked with 4 stars and knocked once. A voice from inside, deep and commanding, said simply, "Enter." The door opened, and Monica stepped into a private conference room where 3 people waited. Admiral Marcus Bridger stood at the head of a polished table, his uniform bearing enough ribbons to catalog a career of conflict and command. Admiral Bridger was younger than Monica expected for the chief of naval operations, maybe late 50s, with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many folded flags presented to too many families. Standing beside him was a woman in the khaki uniform of a Navy commander, Captain Okonkwo, Monica realized, the voice from the phone. And seated at the table, right arm in a sling, bruises darkening the left side of his face, was the man Monica had pulled from the bay. Commander James Bridger looked up as she entered, and their eyes met with the strange intimacy of 2 people who have shared mortality. He started to rise, winced, and the Admiral placed a hand on his shoulder. "Stay seated, Jamie." His voice softened on the name, father bleeding through the military facade for just a moment. Then he turned to Monica, and the full weight of 4-star attention focused on her like a weapons system acquiring target lock. "Ms. Reyes, thank you for coming." Monica stood at attention without thinking, muscle memory from a life she tried to leave behind. "Sir." Admiral Bridger studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. At ease, please sit. He gestured to a chair opposite his son. Monica sat, aware of how out of place she looked in civilian clothes surrounded by uniforms and authority. The Admiral remained standing. I'm going to be direct because that's the only way I know how to be. Last night, you saved my son's life. The investigation is still preliminary, but it appears he experienced a catastrophic electrical failure on final approach. The backup systems failed to engage. He ejected too low over water in zero visibility conditions. The aircraft inverted on impact. The canopy jammed. He paused, and Monica saw something crack in his professional armor. He was drowning when you reached him. The crash crew estimates they were still 90 seconds out when you got him breathing again. Without your intervention, Commander Bridger would not be sitting here. Do you understand what I'm saying? Monica nodded slowly. I understand, sir. Captain Okonkwo spoke for the first time, her voice measured. We've reviewed your personnel file, Ms. Reyes. What we found was surprising. The Admiral walked to the table and opened a folder Monica recognized, her service jacket, the one she hadn't looked at in 3 years. Electronic Warfare Officer, EA-6B Prowler. 2 combat deployments, 317 combat flight hours, Commendation Medal, Air Medal with Combat V. The Admiral's finger traced down the page, reading her history like a story he was discovering for the first time. Then a training accident during workup for your 3rd deployment. You were in the back seat when your pilot lost spatial orientation during night operations. You attempted to take control, but the aircraft entered an unrecoverable spin. You and your pilot ejected at 400 feet. He looked up from the folder, meeting her eyes directly. Your pilot died on impact. You survived with multiple fractures, internal injuries, and shrapnel from the disintegrating aircraft. The investigation cleared you of any fault. In fact, it concluded your actions prevented an earlier crash that would have killed you both. Monica's hands were gripping the edge of her chair, knuckles white. She hadn't talked about that night in 3 years. The darkness and the spinning and the terrible moment when she realized they were going to die, and there was nothing she could do about it. The medical board found you fit for limited duty, the Admiral continued, but not for flight status. Your inner ear damage from the ejection would affect spatial orientation. They offered you a desk posting. You declined and accepted medical separation. His voice held no judgment, just a statement of facts extracted from bureaucratic prose. Monica found her voice. Sir, I couldn't. I couldn't stay in the Navy without flying. It would have broken something in me that was already cracked. So I left. Commander Bridger spoke for the first time, his voice rough from the bay water he'd inhaled. You went from flying combat missions to mopping floors. How does someone make that leap? The question should have been insulting. Instead, it sounded genuinely curious, as if he couldn't comprehend the distance between those 2 lives. You do what you have to do, Monica said quietly. I have a daughter. She needed a parent who was present, not destroyed. I chose present. Captain Okonkwo leaned forward. Ms. Reyes, do you understand why you're here? Why the Admiral himself requested this meeting? Monica shook her head. To thank me, I assumed. But this, she gestured at the room, the carrier, the impossible circumstance, seems excessive for a thank you. Admiral Bridger closed the folder and sat down, his posture shifting from military formality to something more human. I'm not here to thank you. Well, I am, but that's not why we're having this conversation. He glanced at his son, then back to Monica. My son tells me that when he regained consciousness in the ambulance, his last memory before the water was of hands working the canopy release with the kind of precision that suggested training. He says the paramedics told him whoever pulled him out knew exactly how to release the harness without cutting it, knew exactly how to clear an unconscious pilot from an inverted cockpit. Commander Bridger nodded, picking up the thread. It wasn't luck, Ms. Reyes. It was skill, muscle memory. You moved like someone who'd trained for that exact scenario because you had. Any civilian pulling me out would have cut the harness, maybe injured me in the process. You did it right. Monica felt the walls she'd built around her former life beginning to crack. I just did what needed to be done. That's what warriors say, Admiral Bridger said softly. That's what my best people say when they do the impossible and make it look routine. He opened another folder, this one newer, containing documents Monica didn't recognize. I've spent the last 12 hours making calls to the Surgeon General of the Navy, to the Chief of Naval Personnel, to people who can make things happen that normally don't happen. Monica's heart was hammering now. She didn't dare guess where this was going, didn't dare hope. Your medical discharge was based on inner ear damage that would affect your ability to maintain spatial orientation during flight, the Admiral continued. But medical science has advanced in 3 years. New treatments, new therapies, and more importantly, he slid a document across the table. This is an evaluation from our top aerospace medicine specialist. Based on your medical records and advances in vestibular rehabilitation, he believes there's a 70% probability you could be cleared for flight status again. The room seemed to tilt. Monica gripped the table, afraid to believe what she was hearing. "Sir, I don't understand. Why would you?" "Because the Navy made a mistake," Admiral Bridger said, his voice carrying the weight of command and something deeper, something personal. "We let a decorated combat aviator slip through our fingers when she might have been salvageable. We failed you, Ms. Reyes. And last night, you saved my son despite that failure. That says something about your character that I don't want to waste." Captain Okonkwo pulled out a tablet and turned it toward Monica. "If you agree, here's what happens. You undergo a full medical evaluation at Portsmouth Naval Medical Center, the most comprehensive we can provide. If the specialists clear you, we begin the process of recalling you to active duty. Not to a desk, not to limited service, to flight status." Monica's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall in front of 3 senior officers. "And if they don't clear me?" "Then we find another role worthy of your experience," the Admiral said. "Training, safety, tactics development. The Navy has options for officers of your caliber, but Monica," his use of her first name was deliberate, a connection beyond rank, "I think you'll pass. I've seen your eyes, you're still a pilot. You've just been grounded against your will." Commander Bridger leaned forward despite the obvious pain in his ribs. "If it helps, I've already requested you as my electronic warfare officer for my next deployment cycle. If you pass your medical, if you come back, you'd be flying with me. And I promise you I won't crash again." The attempt at humor fell flat, but the sincerity behind it landed. Monica looked at the 3 of them, understanding dawning. This wasn't just gratitude. This was the Navy recognizing it had lost someone valuable and being given an unexpected chance to make it right. "What about my daughter?" she asked, because Sophia had to come first always. "She's 8, I'm all she has." "Family support services," Captain Okonkwo said immediately. "Quality base housing, priority enrollment in Dodia schools, comprehensive childcare. Deployed parents are not a new challenge for the Navy, Ms. Reyes. We have systems." Monica's mind raced through implications and possibilities. To fly again. To be more than invisible. To show Sophia that broken things could be repaired, that dreams could survive impact and trauma and ejection at 400 feet in darkness. "I need to think about this," she said, even though every cell in her body was screaming yes. Admiral Bridger nodded, respecting her need for space. "You have 72 hours. After that, the medical evaluation window closes and this opportunity evaporates. I won't lie to you, there are people in the Pentagon who think I'm being sentimental, who think this is nepotism disguised as gratitude. I have to move fast before they can raise objections. So think, Ms. Reyes. Think carefully. But know that if you say yes, I will personally ensure you get every resource the Navy can provide to succeed." He stood and everyone in the room came to attention. The Admiral extended his hand and Monica shook it, feeling the calluses of a man who'd spent decades doing more than pushing papers. "Whatever you decide," he said quietly, "you'll always have my gratitude and my respect. You saved my son. I can't repay that, but I can offer you your wings back if you're brave enough to reach for them again." The meeting concluded with the same formal precision it had begun. Monica was escorted off the carrier with full honors, piped over the side like visiting royalty, the absurdity of it making her want to laugh and cry simultaneously. The convoy returned her to her apartment, where neighbors had gathered in clusters, speculation running wild. Monica walked through her front door and closed it against the outside world. Sophia wouldn't be home for 3 more hours. She had time to think, to process, to decide whether to reach for a life she'd thought was gone forever. Monica sat on her threadbare couch and pulled out her phone. She scrolled through photos of Sophia, at the beach, at her last birthday party, laughing at something only 8-year-olds found hilarious. Could she do this? Could she be both the mother Sophia needed and the pilot she'd once been? Her eyes fell on a framed photo she kept on the bookshelf, one she looked at every day. Monica in her flight suit standing in front of her prowler, helmet tucked under her arm, grinning at the camera with the confidence of someone who owned the sky. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone from a story Monica told herself late at night when the mop bucket felt heavier than any aircraft. But last night in the bay, for 20 minutes, that woman had returned. And she'd been competent. She'd been needed. She'd been alive in a way that scrubbing floors had never made her feel. Monica picked up her phone and dialed the number Captain Okonkwo had given her. The captain answered on the second ring. "Ms. Reyes, that was faster than 72 hours. "I don't need 72 hours, ma'am," Monica said, and her voice was steady, certain. "When do we start the medical evaluation?" There was a pause, and Monica could hear the smile in Captain Okonkwo's voice. "Pack a bag. A car will pick you up at 600 tomorrow. Bring your daughter. We'll arrange everything." "Welcome back, Officer Reyes. Let's see if we can get you back in the sky where you belong." The next 6 weeks were the most grueling of Monica's life, and she'd ejected from a dying aircraft at night over water. The medical evaluation at Portsmouth wasn't a simple physical. It was an inquisition conducted by specialists who viewed her damaged vestibular system as both a challenge and a puzzle to solve. They spun her in chairs. They put her in simulators that would make a healthy person vomit. They measured the electrical activity in her inner ear with precision that bordered on invasive. And slowly, incrementally, the specialists began nodding. The damage wasn't as severe as the original medical board had believed. More importantly, Monica's brain had compensated in ways the doctors found fascinating, building new neural pathways around the injury. With vestibular rehabilitation therapy, with specific exercises and training protocols, she could potentially recover enough spatial orientation to return to flight status. But potentially wasn't good enough for Admiral Bridger. He wanted certainty, and in medicine, certainty was expensive and time-consuming. Monica underwent 3 months of intensive therapy, 6 hours a day, learning to retrain her inner ear and brain to work together in ways they'd forgotten. Sophia stayed with her the entire time, living in base housing that felt palatial compared to their apartment, attending a school where teachers knew what deployment meant and didn't make military kids feel different. Monica watched her daughter thrive, and some of the guilt about potentially leaving her began to ease. At night, after therapy and after tucking Sophia into bed, Monica studied. She relearned systems and procedures that had evolved in her 3 years away. The EA-18G Growler had replaced her beloved Prowler. New electronic warfare systems, new tactics, new threats. She consumed technical manuals like literature, hungry to prove she could still be relevant in a field that moved at the speed of innovation. Captain Okonkwo became an unexpected mentor, stopping by weekly to check on progress and offer guidance. "The Admiral's taking heat for this," she told Monica one evening over coffee in the base commissary. "Some people think you're his pet project, that he's wasting resources on gratitude. Others see it as the Navy taking care of its own. Either way, you've got a target on your back before you even put on a flight suit again." Monica stirred her coffee, considering the politics she'd forgotten existed. "What do you think, ma'am?" Okonkwo smiled. "I think you pulled a drowning man from a sinking jet at dark 30 during a storm. I think anyone questioning your competence or dedication can come talk to me, and I'll happily educate them. Just make sure you pass everything, Reyes. Give them no ammunition." 5 months after that night in the bay, Monica stood in a flight surgeon's office and received the words she'd stopped believing she'd ever hear. "Flight status approved. Cleared for all operations." "Welcome back, Lieutenant Commander Reyes." They'd promoted her as part of the reinstatement. 3 years of lost time returned as credit toward rank. It was unprecedented, unusual, and absolutely something Admiral Bridger's influence had made happen. Monica didn't care about the politics anymore. She held the medical clearance in her hands and felt something broken slot back into place inside her chest. The day she received her new flight suit, charcoal gray with her name and rank embroidered above the pocket, Sophia helped her try it on. "Mommy, you look like a superhero," her daughter said, and Monica laughed, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not a superhero, baby. I'm just someone who gets to do the job she loves again." "That's what superheroes say," Sophia said with perfect 8-year-old logic, and Monica couldn't argue. Her refresher training began at Naval Air Station Oceana, the same base where she'd once pushed a mop. Walking through those hangars in a flight suit instead of coveralls felt surreal, like crossing between parallel universes where different versions of herself existed. Some of the pilots remembered her from before. Most didn't. But word spread quickly about the janitor who'd pulled Commander Bridger from the bay, about the Admiral's intervention, about the decorated combat pilot who'd been mopping floors while they'd been flying. Reactions varied. Some welcomed her with open curiosity. Others kept their distance, waiting to see if she could still perform. A few made it clear they thought she was stealing a slot from someone more deserving, that connections and gratitude had opened doors skill alone wouldn't have. Monica let their doubt fuel her. In the simulator, she was flawless. In the classroom, she outscored pilots 10 years younger. And when they finally strapped her into an EA-18G Growler backseat for her first actual flight since the accident, Monica felt the universe align. The Growler was different from her old Prowler, more powerful, more advanced, packed with electronic warfare systems that would have seemed like science fiction 3 years ago. But the essential experience was identical. The pressure of G-forces, the horizon tilting through the canopy, the controlled chaos of flight operations, the radio chatter of pilots talking to each other in the specialized language of people who lived in 3 dimensions. Monica's pilot for the training flight was a lieutenant commander named Marcus Webb, call sign Steady, a veteran with over 1,500 hours in Growlers and a reputation for being unflappable. He'd volunteered to fly with her, which Monica appreciated. Most pilots would have viewed a rusty backseater with inner ear damage as a liability. "How are you feeling back there, Rays?" Steady's voice came through her helmet speakers as they taxied toward the catapult. "Like I never left," Monica said, and it was true. Her hands moved over the systems with remembered precision, muscle memory proving more reliable than conscious thought. "Let's see if you still got it," Steady said, and Monica heard the challenge beneath the casual tone. They shot off the catapult at 140 knots, 0 to flight speed in 2 seconds, the acceleration pressing Monica back into her seat with 4 gs of welcome brutality. And then they were airborne, climbing through 5,000 feet, 10,000, the Virginia coast falling away beneath them in geometric patterns of land and sea. "You're cleared to run your systems," Steady said. "Let's see what those magic fingers can do." Monica activated the electronic warfare suite, and the world transformed. On her displays, the electromagnetic spectrum bloomed into visibility. Radars, communications, targeting systems, the invisible infrastructure of modern warfare made visible through electronics. Her job was to see it, categorize it, and if necessary, jam it into blindness. For 90 minutes, they flew training scenarios that tested her ability to identify threats, prioritize targets, and deploy countermeasures. Monica fell into the rhythm like she'd never left, her damaged inner ear causing no problems at all in the smooth flight regime. When they landed, Steady climbed down from the front seat and walked back to where Monica was still sitting, running post-flight checks. "You're better than most of the nuggets we're graduating these days," he said simply. "Whatever happened to you, it didn't break what matters. Welcome back to the squadron." Word of her successful flight spread quickly. Within a week, Monica was fully integrated into the training pipeline, flying daily, her confidence rebuilding with each successful sortie. But the real test came 2 months later, when orders arrived assigning her to VAQ-134, the Garudas. an expeditionary electronic attack squadron preparing for deployment aboard USS Abraham Lincoln. Her electronic warfare officer would be Commander James Bridger, exactly as he'd promised in that conference room aboard the Truman. They met officially for the first time since the accident at a squadron briefing. Bridger's injuries had healed, but Monica noticed he moved more carefully now, a awareness of mortality that hadn't been there before his swim in the Chesapeake. "Lieutenant Commander Reyes," he said, extending his hand. "I believe we have some flying to do together." "Sir," Monica replied, shaking his hand, "I hope you've been practicing your water survival skills." The room went silent, then erupted in laughter. Bridger grinned. "Every damn day, Reyes, every damn day." They flew together 3 times before the deployment, building the rapport that kept crews alive when things went wrong. Bridger was a skilled pilot, confident but not reckless, with the kind of spatial awareness that made him anticipate problems before they materialized. Monica learned his flying style, his communication patterns, his tendency to hum old rock songs during long transits. They were becoming a crew, 2 separate operators functioning as a single entity. The night before deployment, Monica put Sophia to bed in the base housing they'd been assigned. Her daughter had adjusted remarkably well, making friends, thriving in her new school, proud to tell people her mom was a pilot. "How long will you be gone?" Sophia asked, the question she'd been avoiding for weeks finally emerging. 6 months, Monica said gently, "but I'll email every day I can, and we'll video chat whenever the ship has bandwidth. And Grandma's coming to stay with you, and you'll be so busy with school and friends you'll barely notice I'm gone." It was a lie they both needed. Sophia would notice, every day. But she was a Navy kid now, and Navy kids learned early that goodbyes were part of the deal. "Will you be safe, Mommy?" Monica thought about ejecting at 400 feet, about drowning in a sinking cockpit, about all the ways military aviation could kill you even when you did everything right. "I'll be as safe as I can be," Monica said, because honesty mattered more than comfort. "But baby, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm good at it, and good at something dangerous is safer than bad at something easy. Does that make sense?" Sophia nodded seriously. "You're the best, Mommy. Everyone says so. The other kids' parents talk about you. They say you're special." Monica hugged her daughter tight, wondering when 8-year-olds became so perceptive. "You're what makes me special, Sophia. Everything I do knowing I have you to come home to. That makes me careful. That makes me better. Remember that, okay?" The next morning, Monica boarded USS Abraham Lincoln with the rest of VAQ-134, her sea bag over her shoulder and her flight gear checked and rechecked. The carrier smelled of jet fuel and metal and ocean, the scent of a deployed life she'd forgotten she loved. The ship pulled away from Norfolk at 800, gray water churning beneath the hull as tugboats guided 90,000 tons of warship toward open ocean. Monica stood on the flight deck watching the coastline recede, watching America become memory and anticipation. Beside her, Bridger watched the same horizon. "Second thoughts?" he asked quietly. "Every second," Monica admitted. "But I'm still here." "Good." He turned to face her and his expression was serious. "I want you to know something, Reyes. You earned this, not because you saved my life, not because my father made calls. You earned this with every perfect flight, every flawless systems check, every evolution you've completed since you came back. Anyone who says otherwise hasn't been paying attention." Monica nodded, accepting the words because coming from him they mattered. "Thank you, sir." "Call me Bridger when we're flying," he said. "Sir is for the ground. In the air, we're a crew. Equals." "Bridger," she repeated, testing the informality. It felt right. The deployment began quietly, routine operations in the Atlantic, then transiting south toward the Mediterranean. Monica fell into the rhythm of carrier life. Flight operations, maintenance, briefings, the careful choreography of thousands of personnel living in a floating city. Her call sign emerged naturally during a mission brief when someone made a joke about her janitorial past and Bridger shut it down hard. "She cleaned floors while the rest of us preened," he'd said. "She saved my ass in the water when I was drowning. You want to question her credentials, take it up with me." After that, someone started calling her Mop, and Monica shut that down immediately. "You want a call sign for me? Fine, try Siren." Because I sing electronic warfare like it's a goddamn opera and I'll lure your enemies to their deaths. The name stuck. Within a week she was Siren and the mockery evaporated, replaced by something better, respect earned through competence. The squadron deployed to the Mediterranean, conducting training exercises with NATO allies, maintaining readiness, showing the flag. Then the orders changed. Intelligence had identified a Russian electronic warfare installation in Syria conducting operations that threatened coalition aircraft. The installation needed to be mapped, categorized, and if possible, neutralized. It was exactly the mission Siren had trained for her entire career. The brief was held in the carrier's intelligence center, red lights preserving night vision, classified materials spread across tables. The target was sophisticated, Russian Krasukha 4 systems designed to jam satellites and aircraft sensors, operated by personnel who knew what they were doing. This isn't a training mission, the intelligence officer said bluntly. They'll be actively trying to fry your systems and track your aircraft. If they get a lock, they can pass targeting data to surface-to-air missiles. You'll be working in a denied environment with hostile intent. Monica studied the mission profile, calculating angles and distances, planning which systems to activate and when. This was her domain, the invisible battlefield where electrons were weapons and information was armor. What's our rules of engagement? Bridger asked. Defensive countermeasures authorized. If they paint you, you can jam them. If they attempt missile lock, your weapon's free to suppress. But we're not starting a war here, Commander. We're gathering intelligence and protecting ourselves in that order. The mission launched at 200, 4 aircraft in a loose formation, flying low over the Mediterranean toward the Syrian coast. Monica and Bridger were in the lead Growler, their aircraft packed with electronic warfare systems that turned the jet into a flying sensor platform. Feet dry, Bridger announced as they crossed the coastline, terrain rising beneath them in the darkness. Monica activated her systems carefully, listening to the electromagnetic environment like a hunter in deep forest, trying not to announce her presence while gathering information. The Russian installation was radiating, confident in its capabilities, sweeping the sky with radar beams that painted everything in range. Monica began cataloging frequencies, modulations, tracking patterns. She was building a picture of the enemy's capabilities, creating the intelligence that would let coalition aircraft operate safely in this airspace. Siren, Bravo Flight were getting painted hard, one of the other Growlers called. They know we're here. Copy, Monica replied, her voice calm despite adrenaline flooding her system. Stand by for coordinated jamming. On my mark, light them up across spectrum. 3, 2, 1 mark. 4 Growlers activated their jamming systems simultaneously, hitting the Russian installation with electronic warfare across multiple frequencies. It was like shouting in a library, impossible to miss, but the goal wasn't stealth anymore. The goal was dominance. The Russian system stuttered, their radar beams fragmenting as Monica's jamming disrupted their ability to see. They adapted quickly, switching frequencies, changing modulations, trying to burn through the interference. It became a duel conducted at the speed of light, move and countermove, Monica's fingers dancing across her controls while Bridger flew them through the darkness at 400 knots. Siren, they're attempting missile lock, Bravo called, tension evident in his voice. Monica had already seen it, had already reacted, her systems deploying countermeasures that made the Growlers invisible to the seeking radar. The missiles never launched. They couldn't lock what they couldn't see. All flights egress, Bridger commanded. We've got what we came for. Time to go home. They turned away from the coast, climbing back over the Mediterranean, leaving the frustrated Russian operators behind. The mission was a success. Intelligence gathered, aircraft protected, no shots fired, no international incidents. Perfect. Back aboard the Lincoln, Monica climbed down from the Growler and found her hands shaking from adrenaline dump. Bridger noticed, placed a steady hand on her shoulder. First combat mission since you came back. How do you feel? Monica laughed, surprising herself. Alive, competent, like maybe I belong here after all. You absolutely belong here, Bridger said. That was textbook electronic warfare. You made those Russians look like amateurs. The mission report went up the chain of command, and Monica's performance was noted in language that didn't appear in routine evaluations. The word exceptional appeared 3 times. Combat tested made its first appearance in her file since before the accident. She was rebuilding not just her career but her reputation. 2 months into deployment, Sophia sent her a drawing through the ship's email system. It showed a stick figure in a cockpit, shooting lightning bolts at bad guys, with "My Mom the Superhero" written across the top in careful 8-year-old handwriting. Monica pinned it to the wall of her tiny birthing space and looked at it every night before sleep. This was why. Not for the adrenaline or the challenge or even the satisfaction of doing something she loved. For Sophia, watching her mother refuse to stay broken. The deployment continued. More missions, more successes. Monica's confidence grew with each flight, her damaged inner ear causing no issues, her skills sharp and getting sharper. The squadron began using her as an instructor for the younger electronic warfare officers, her experience and teaching ability making her valuable beyond just her mission performance. And slowly, word began to spread beyond VAQ-134, the janitor who'd saved the CNO's son and returned to flight status, the combat veteran who'd refused to stay grounded. Stories grew in the telling, exaggerated until Monica barely recognized herself in the legends being whispered across the fleet. But she didn't correct them. Let people believe what they wanted. She'd keep flying, keep proving herself, keep being excellent until the legends couldn't keep up with reality. 6 months into deployment, Monica received an encrypted message from Captain Okonkwo. "Request for your next assignment coming soon. Admiral has plans for you. Prepare for interesting times." Monica smiled at the vague warning. After ejecting at 400 feet, after pulling a drowning man from a sinking jet, after rebuilding a shattered career one flight at a time, interesting didn't scare her anymore. The Lincoln turned for home, mission complete, deployment successful. Monica stood on the flight deck as the Virginia coast appeared on the horizon, same view in reverse from 6 months ago. Bridger joined her at the rail. "You know this is just the beginning," he said. "Word is you're being considered for test pilot school, maybe a command track. You've kicked down doors people didn't know existed." Monica thought about the 3 years she'd spent invisible, mopping floors while pilots walked past without seeing her. "I'm not trying to kick down doors," she said quietly. "I'm just trying to fly and be good at it and maybe show my daughter that broken things can be fixed if you're willing to work hard enough." "You're showing a lot more than just your daughter," Bridger said. "Half the female officers in the fleet are watching what you're doing and thinking maybe their stories don't have to end at medical discharge either. You're changing things whether you mean to or not." The ship docked at Norfolk to fanfare Monica hadn't expected. A band played, families crowded the pier, and standing in the front row holding a sign that said "Welcome Home" siren in rainbow letters was Sophia with Monica's mother beside her. Monica was down the brow faster than procedure allowed, sweeping Sophia into her arms, breathing in the smell of her daughter's hair and feeling her world click back into place. "I watched your ship come in from the gate," Sophia said, words tumbling over each other. "It's so big, Mommy, and everyone says you're famous now." "Are you famous?" "No, baby," Monica said, kissing her daughter's forehead. "I'm just your mom who has a cool job, that's all." But as she carried Sophia toward the parking lot, she caught sight of the banner someone had hung from the squadron building. VAQ-134 WLCOMES home the GARUDAS. And beneath it, smaller but deliberate, "Fair winds and following seas to siren and all who fly." Monica smiled. Maybe Bridger was right. Maybe she was changing things. Or maybe things were changing around her, and she was just brave enough to ride the wave instead of drowning in it. That night, after Sophia was asleep, Monica sat on her porch and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, beyond atmosphere and gravity, was the territory she'd claimed back from injury and doubt and 3 years of invisible labor. She'd been broken. She'd been dismissed. She'd been forgotten by everyone except herself. And then one night, she'd pulled a drowning man from the Chesapeake Bay, and the universe had noticed. Monica thought about the 5 Humvees rolling up her street, about the Admiral's offer, about every flight since then that had proven she still had what it took. Not luck, not connections, competence. Some people spent their lives trying to be seen. Monica had spent 3 years learning to be invisible, and in the end, it was her actions in the dark that brought her back to the light. The stars didn't answer. They never did. But Monica smiled at them anyway, secure in the knowledge that soon, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, she'd be back up there among them, turning electrons into weapons and making the invisible visible. Her phone buzzed. A message from Admiral Bridger himself, rare and therefore significant. Test pilot school recommendation submitted. You've earned it. Make us proud, Lieutenant Commander, you already have. Monica put the phone down and closed her eyes, letting the Virginia night air wash over her, feeling Sophia's drawing in her pocket like a talisman. Superhero. Maybe Sophia was right. Not because Monica had special powers or wore a cape, but because she'd faced the thing that broke her, wrestled it to submission, and come back stronger. Because she'd refused to accept that one bad night could define the rest of her life. Because when someone needed help, she'd run toward danger instead of away from it, even though she had every reason to stay invisible and safe. The porch light flickered. Inside, Sophia stirred in her sleep, calling for water. Monica went to her, to the small routines of motherhood that grounded her more than any career achievement. And in the morning, she'd go back to the squadron, to the jets, to the sky that had always been her first home. The janitor with the mop was gone. Siren had taken her place. And this time, Monica knew, no one would forget. The recognition wasn't in titles or medals or even the Admiral's recommendation, though those mattered. It was in the way other pilots looked at her now, seeing not what she'd been but what she was, competent, proven, unbreakable. It was in Sophia's eyes when she talked about her mom, the pilot. It was in the knowledge that she'd taken the hardest journey anyone can take, from invisible to essential, from forgotten to remembered, from broken to whole. Not because someone gave it to her, because she'd earned it one perfect flight at a time until even the sky had to acknowledge she belonged. Monica smiled, kissed her daughter's forehead, and walked back to the porch to watch the stars a little longer. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new flights, new chances to prove herself. But tonight she was home, and that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.